All right, hey guys, welcome back to another video article that I'm putting together. This is another freeform video, and I wanted to continue from the video article that I put together, sequence 010, or 010 sequence, I don't even remember the name of it. Oh yeah, it's, what is it called? It's called sequence... It's 010 sequence 10 or 010 sequence 10. Okay, that's the name of it. I wanted to continue from the video article that I did recently called 010 sequence 10. All right, so I guess we'll call this sequence 11. Okay, so welcome back. Okay, so continuing on from the last video article that I did, continuing on from the last freeform talk that I did, I just wanted to elaborate and make a couple of things clear. Okay, so, you know, the idea that we talk about, or I should say, the idea that I talk about the universe being a naturally occurring crystal core quantum computer, which is actually represented as a black hole in the universe above us. Our particular universe being so large, the concept is that our universe is so large and so old that it must be a supermassive black hole in the universe above us. But it doesn't necessarily have to, because in the video, or the talk that I did last time, I talked about how the Planck scale for each universe as it goes through... as it goes from one universe, and then that universe creates a black hole, and then inside that black hole, a new universe forms and a new black hole forms. As that cascade progresses, each Planck scale technically gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Now, that's the theory. That's the idea. Although a universe could grow to the point where the Planck scale, technically speaking, could be larger than the universe that is hosting it. You know, the mathematics is so unclear as to exactly how that would work. I'm not really sure how that would break down, but we can definitely say that there is a possibility that even though there's, say, a universe inside what we would call a small black hole, like, say, you have different types of black holes in this universe. You have supermassive black holes, which are black holes that are literally millions of times the mass of our sun, and those are usually found at the center of a galaxy, and they have such gravitational influence, they influence the entire gravity. Their gravitational influence and their electromagnetic influence influences the entire galaxy. Okay, and then you have different types of black holes, and they come in different sizes. You can have a black hole that's about 4 or 5 times the density of the sun. Actually, technically speaking, you can have a black hole that's smaller than that. It just depends on how fast it's moving through the dark energy field, or you could say, depending on how fast it's moving through the Higgs field. You know, the dark energy field, the Higgs field, we talked about that last time. You could call it just space. Dark energy is space itself. That's something that I didn't really elaborate on in my last talk, but I have elaborated on what is dark energy, what is gravity, and what is quantum gravity. I've made several videos on those. So what I want to do in this talk is I actually just want to get back to basic, okay? And before I get back to basic, I'm just going to throw this out right now. Imagine when I say all of the cores of the cosmos are naturally occurring crystal core quantum computers, what I'm actually saying is all of the cores of the cosmos are giant magnetic balls, okay? They're spheres. They're electromagnetic spheres. They're like a ball, okay? Imagine a solid iron ball, okay? Like a ball bearing, you know, like a BB, something that you would find in a gear or in a... yeah, basically in a gear. So, perfectly sphere ball, okay? Now, the geometry, the actual crystalline structure inside that sphere, okay? Obviously, the outside is perfectly round or close to perfectly round. It could vary depending on, you know, so many different circumstances, and I use the word modulation. Depending on the modulation, the ball could have slight deviations from a perfect sphere. But let's just remove modulation because it just makes things a lot easier when we're discussing general concepts. So you have a perfectly round sphere. Imagine it a solid magnetic ball, okay? Now here's the trick. It's actually not a magnet like a bar magnet, okay? What you actually have going on is you have a double magnetic field, okay? Now that's hard to explain. There are a couple of videos that I've come across recently that really get into explaining it, but instead of a bar magnet, okay, which is you have North Pole on one side and then you have the South Pole on the other side, okay, which is your traditional bar magnet, what you actually have is you have two bar magnets fused together, okay? So you actually have, and if you actually look at the crystalline structure, it's the tetrahedron. I forgot the exact name of the geometric structure, but it's the star tetrahedron, and I think it's called the Macarba. I forgot the exact name, but anyways, when you look at it, it looks like the flower of life. I really should be more prepared when I do these talks. You know, there's so much terminology, and unless you actually have the terminology in front of you, or unless you talk about this at breakfast time with your colleagues day in and day out, you don't remember the terminology for everything in the universe, okay? But anyways, I will definitely put up some graphics, if not in this presentation. When I do fine-tune this talk, I will definitely put up some images and some representation so you can understand what I'm talking about. But if you can imagine, you have two bar magnets, okay, a male bar magnet and a female bar magnet, and they're virtually identical. And you literally fuse them together to create a perfectly round sphere. So you actually have an electromagnetic field that is a dual electromagnetic field. It's hard to explain, and I will definitely get into that more, especially after doing the research that I'm currently working on, where the guy is actually, I forgot the name of the video, and I'm gonna have to obviously edit this because I don't want to just be blabbing and being incoherent. But there's a video on YouTube, and this guy has some magnetic fields, and he's using different types of magnets and high energy plasma in a vacuum chamber, and he's actually showing how the magnetic fields interact in the plasma with the magnetic fields. And it's some quite interesting revelations and visual representations that he's able to put together. And you know, there's all kinds of esoteric knowledge about the coupling of both the male and the female. So anyways, so you have this sphere, and you have not just a standard magnetic pole like if it was a bar magnet, okay, which that's the big misconception in general mainstream science, where they show the magnetic field. They just try to show it as a single bar magnet where there's a North Pole and a South Pole. It's actually, there's both a North and South Pole, and on both sides of the, on both sides. So on the top of the sphere, you have both the a North and South magnetic field, and on the bottom of the sphere, you have both North and South magnetic fields. Okay, and it's the interactions that create the electromagnetic properties that gives the planet its ability to vibrate space-time, the Higgs field, the dark energy field, the ether, the medium that the universe is actually, that we are all in. It's a geometric structure, and it's based on pure mathematics, okay? So the planet, the stars, the cores of the cosmos, okay, they're not just balls of gas. They're not just balls of rocks. They are highly magnetic, energetic, crystal core quantum computers, and they vibrate at very specific frequencies, okay? Now, one of the reasons why the knowledge is being suppressed about how these crystal cores actually work is because if you understand that the cores themselves can use electromagnetic vibrations, and they can create, they're creating they're creating electromagnetic vibrations around themselves, and it's actually creating a double torus type of effect, okay? And that field that they're creating is able to literally warp space-time, so that if you're outside of the field, you're experiencing more time, and if you're closer and you're inside the field, you're experiencing less time, okay? So all the cores of the cosmos have a tax to pay with the dark energy field. One of the things that they do, and this sounds kind of, this is, you know, sounds almost, it's personifying the core, or you could say that it's like, maybe it's too simplified, but I really do have to just talk in very simple, basic terms so that you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about. And if you do your research and you watch more of my videos, I think you will be able to understand more. Plus, I definitely need to do more videos and really get into creating some animations on my own to really explain this. But the crystal cores of the cosmos, they create an electromagnetic energy field around themselves to literally experience less time. Okay? Now, the reason why they do that is, let's just say they didn't do that. They would decay a lot faster if they didn't do that. Now, so then the question is what is time? Okay? So what is time, right? And how does time work? And how come time and decay are tied to each other? Well, okay, so that's actually a very good question. Time and decay, time is the decay rate of matter. That is literally the decay. Time is the decay rate of matter. So if matter is just sitting, say, a round cube of ice, okay, is sitting in water, okay? Let's just say, doesn't matter the temperatures, okay? A round cube of ice is sitting in water, okay, and it's floating. It's floating in water. Now there's an interaction at the surface of the round ice cube ball, the ball of ice, and the water, where there's a temperature variance between the water and the ice, ball of ice. And because the water is warmer than the ice, the water is going to want to melt the ice. Okay? That's exactly what's happening with all matter in the universe. The dark energy field is a solvent. It literally it will dissolve matter. And that the dissolving of matter is the flow of time itself. So if that matter is not moving over the dark energy field and creating an electromagnetic energy within its core, which then is able to keep the core growing, which is also then able to expand its matter, which then it also is able to create a electromagnetic field around itself, which costs it energy to do that. But because of the structure of the core, it's able to take the matter that it has and it's able to magnify its electromagnetic field, which what that means is that, okay, so going back to the reference where the round ball of ice is sitting in water, if you were somehow able to take that round ball of ice that's sitting in water and you were able to start vibrating that round ball of ice that's sitting in water so violently and precisely that there was ripples in the water, so there was less water actually touching the ice. If you were able to take that ball of ice and start vibrating it so fast, okay, if you were able to start vibrating that ice so fast that the water that was touching it is now not touching it, or not touching it as much because it's vibrating so fast, it's actually creating little tiny microscopic ripples, okay, so what that would do, and this is all very, very, very simplified, of course, but what that would do is it would reduce the amount of contact that the ice has with the water, and therefore, because the amount, the reduction in that contact directly equates to the ice melting slower. Okay, so it's all about the ice melting slower. That's the way you have to think about it. The cores of the cosmos want to melt slower, or they want to be dissolved slower, or they want to decay slower. And that's the absolute truth. That's how it works. They are aware of this. This is why the universe has formed up the way it has intelligently, because it understands that the solvent of the universe is the dark energy field, and in order for them to avoid basically being dissolved, they have to create electromagnetic vibrations that pushes away that solvent. Now, this is done on different quantum gradients, and that's why we have the galaxy, which is a giant spherical shape, and then we have the star, which is a spherical shape, and then we have the atom, which is a spherical shape, and then we have the protons and the electrons, the subatomic particles, which are all spherical shapes. And then, of course, you get down to the quarks. And then once you get down past the quarks, what you have happening is the matter starts to literally go through an event horizon type situation. So going back to, say, hey, planet Earth, we're talking about an event horizon, and you say, hey, why aren't we talking about a black hole here? And the answer is, yes, we are. We are talking about a mathematical, theoretical computation where you get down to 0, okay? And then you get into the minus numbers. So you have 0, 1, and then there is a point where you have 0, 0, but that's almost impossible. So you get down to 0, 1, and then from 0, 1, you get down to, oh yeah. So you get down to 0, 1, and then you get down to minus 0, 1. And then you get to minus 1, and then you get to minus 2, minus 3, minus 4, minus 5, minus 6. But minus 1 is never a minus 1. It's always a minimum of a minus 0, 1. Okay, so it's a mathematical equation, but you get into negative numbers. Okay, so what happens at the core of planet Earth, just like an event horizon around a black hole, you have negative information, you have negative energy, you have negative numbers, and that's why we call that a quantum computer. You're actually leveraging the power of an entire new universe because the Planck scale flips, okay? You've heard of antimatter. It's not exactly like antimatter, but the idea is that the actual equations flip from a positive number to a negative number once you go over that event horizon, which the event horizon is exactly 0, okay? And so once you get past 0, you can't go past 0, right? So what you do is you just start counting backwards, basically. And how we count backwards is we just have a minus sign indicating that these numbers are now backwards. And so at the cores of the cosmos is a black hole, okay? And it's actually a quantum computer. Now, what I was talking about is once you get past, so you're looking at the atom, you have the proton, then you have the quarks, and then underneath the quarks, what you actually have is you have an energy field that entangles all of the mass within the medium of that particular core, and that all of those particles are quantum tied to each other with quantum entanglement, okay? And what we call that is local entanglement, okay? So if you listen to my What is Gravity, if you listen to my What is Quantum Gravity video, or if you watched my What is Quantum Gravity video, you will remember that I was talking about that 1 is the crystal core quantum computer black hole in the universe above us, and that state number 2 is the wormhole that connects this universe to that universe, okay? But the wormhole, when I say it's the wormhole that connects this universe to that universe, what that means is that there is a physical, mathematical representation for every single particle in this universe, okay, that is connected to the core of the black hole that is in the universe above us. And wrapping your head around all of this, what is up, what is down, down is up is down. How can you say it's up and down when it's not really up and down? It's all inside itself. It's all different octaves operating at a different frequency. It all could be happening in the same virtual space, But because it's at different octaves in different frequency levels, it's kind of like radios on a TV signal, radios from a radio station or from a TV broadcast station, where you have thousands of different radio signals passing through this room that I'm standing in, or the room that you're in. All kinds of information is being sent, but they're all on different frequencies. Okay, so they're, you take the radio, and as you move across the dial, you're able to pick up so many different channels and tune into so many different radio stations, and they're all occupying the same space. It's not like they're bumping into each other or they're taking up different space. They're all in the same space, but because they're on different frequencies, when you tune the radio, it only tunes to that particular frequency, and it doesn't hear any of the rest. That's the same thing that could technically be happening when the black hole is created. That negative universe could literally be in the very same space that we are in, but because it is on such a completely different wavelength or vibration, we don't interact with it. I mean, of course, the scales could be totally different as well. Now, that might be a little bit of a side note, but the point being is that there is a connection with the crystal core quantum computer core itself and every particle in this universe. Now, this is the trick. And if you actually look at the Fibonacci scale, and if you look at mathematics, you will see that there are certain nodes and there are certain octaves. And if you look at, for example, pi, you will notice that, certain numbers can be added up or calculated against themselves, and they always come out with a certain characteristic number. Now, it's the same thing, because you have to understand, if we are in the fifth... Okay, so let me just go through this real quick. The first state of the dark energy field is the crystal core quantum computer we are in, which is in the universe above us. The second state of the dark energy field is the wormhole connecting this universe, all matter in this universe, to the universe above us. The third state is the void itself, the deepest, densest parts of the universe. Now, when I say the deepest, densest parts of the universe, mainstream science would say those are the most void, devoid of anything whatsoever, and that's why they're filled with absolute nothingness. But it's exactly the opposite. The actual space, the density of the dark energy in the void is the most dense, okay? And that's because there is no vibration pushing the water away from the matter, like I was talking about with the ball of ice. If you take that ball of ice and you vibrate it violently, okay, against the water, it will make ripples in the water, and it'll make gaps between the ice and the water. And because there are gaps between the ice and the water, there's less water touching the ice, which means that the ice will be melting less. Okay, now there's obviously some complications with this theory or this analogy, because the energy that you're putting into vibrating the ice causes a thermal property in its own, which could cause extra heating. But let's pretend that that's not an issue, okay? Which it's not, because that's where time, it gets really, really complicated. But, okay, so let's just say that if you vibrate that ice ball that's sitting in the water, if you vibrate it fast enough, it's creating ripples in the water, and there's less water touching the ice. And because there's less water touching the ice, the ice is melting slower than if it was just sitting there floating in the ice with all of the surface touching the ice and there was no ripples, okay? So as you ripple that ball of ice and you violently shake it, it creates these ripples. And so then you have to take a snapshot of the ripples, okay? And you have to ask yourself, where there's no ripples in the water, is the water denser than their area where there are ripples in the water? And if you look at the area where there are ripples in the water, you will say that that area is less dense than the area with no ripples in the water. Okay? That's the exact same concept with the third state of the dark energy field. Okay? That's the void. That's the space between the galaxies where there is no matter, no crystal balls, no iron balls that are vibrating violently, pushing away the liquid crystal medium that is the dark energy field, okay? And there's no ripples, and so therefore, that is the most dense dark energy in the universe. Now, when you're in the void and you look around, what do you see? The first structures that you really understand and see is the galaxy. Okay, so then you say, okay, so then what's the fourth state of the dark energy field? And the fourth state of the dark energy field is the galaxy. Now, you could say, well, hold on, I'm kind of confused here. And I'll say, that's fine. Let's just go through this and I'll try to explain it, because to be honest with you, it's very difficult to understand. I'm going to try to go through it and try to explain it as best I can, because that's all I can do. Okay, so at the core of the galaxy is that supermassive black hole, and it is so dense, it's like millions of times the mass of our sun in a single point in the universe. And it has tremendous electromagnetic properties. Imagine a giant magnetic sphere that is so dense, it's able to vibrate the space around the entire galaxy to the point where those ripples that I was talking about, okay, it's able to vibrate the dark energy field so that there's a certain density around the galaxy, okay? And all of the stars within that galaxy contribute to vibrating with their electromagnetic energy, which ultimately all that really is vibrations, okay? With their vibrations, they are able to push the density of the dark energy field that would normally be around them away from themselves, okay? So just like the ball of ice, where if it's just sitting in the water, water is contacting the ice, and because there's a differential of temperature, when the water is contacting the ice, where the water is contacting the ice, it is melting faster than if it wasn't contacting the ice, okay? So as the supermassive black hole and all the matter within the galaxy is able to vibrate on the finest of scales and push away the dark energy field, it's melting less, okay? So what that equates to is it's pushing away space-time, okay? So just like Einstein says that space-time is called space-time because if you're sitting on the surface of Earth and Earth is pushing away the space-time, that means that when an hour passes on Earth, if you were to go, 10,000 miles above you, instantly teleport 10,000 miles directly above you, so now you're in outer space, you're still within the solar system, and you're still within the galaxy, and obviously you're still in the universe, but you're still within the solar system, but you're no longer in the influence of the electromagnetic vibrations of Earth for the most part, because they do go out on a sliding scale for a very, very long distance. But for the most part, it's like once you're past 99%, you're pretty much out of the gravitational influence, which is those vibrations that I'm talking about, okay? So if you're 10,000 miles, if you teleport, okay, so you've got a watch, okay, and you're sitting right next to your twin, okay, and he has the identical watch, all right, and you tell your twin, okay, I'm going to teleport myself 10,000 feet above us, and I'm going to sit there and watch my watch for 1 hour, and then what I'm going to do is as soon as I see 1 hour on my watch, I'm going to then teleport back to where I am right now, and let's see how much time is on my watch and how much time is on your watch. Will they be the same or will they be different? Okay, so let's do that. Okay, snap your fingers. Boom. You teleport. You're now 10,000 miles above Earth. Okay, you're looking at your watch. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, 58, 59, 1 hour. Boom. Teleport back. And you look at your twin's watch, sitting, he didn't move at all, he was just sitting right where he was. Will there be more time on your watch? Or will there be more time on his watch? Or will your watches be the same? The answer to that is there will be more time on your watch. Okay? Now, this kind of sounds weird, and it's really hard to explain. It's almost counterintuitive, but when you were up there, and if you were up there for an hour, and you came back, he only experienced, let's just round it off to 45 minutes. And you can say, how is that? How could that possibly be? He experienced less time. Well, why did he experience less time? Because the Earth is vibrating violently in this solvent medium, which is the dark energy field. And as it's making those ripples in the dark energy field, it's pushing away that solvent. And so it's decaying at a slower rate. And because it's decaying or melting at a slower rate, there's less time passing. It's about perspective. It's general relativity. Okay, it's relative. There's less time passing relative to you, who was out of the Earth's gravitational influence for an hour, and you came back. But when you were out of Earth's gravitational influence, while you were 10,000 miles above the surface and out of Earth's gravitational influence, time for you flowed faster. Now, you didn't think that time flowed faster. You still felt like an hour was an hour. Nothing to you seemed out of the norm. But when you came down here, when you came back and you looked at your twin's watch, he only experienced 45 minutes. So then you could say, well, what is the factor? What is the difference? What is what was different? How could that possibly be? And then the answer is space-time. There is so much space at the surface of the Earth. There's so much quote-unquote space or space-time, okay? And as you go further out into space, there is more space-time. And as you go from the surface of the Earth towards the center of the Earth, there is less space-time. Then you get to the crystal core quantum computer, which is pretty much very close to zero space-time. And then at the very, very center of that, you have a medium singularity. And then inside that singularity, you have a new space-time created. Okay? And a new dimension is created. And because there is a new dimension created, the way that works is that new dimension is under a lot less pressure than the dimension we are in right now. And so because that dimension is under a lot less pressure, it has the ability to do things that could not be done in this dimension. Because there's a lot less pressure, and because of the way the geometric structure works, the crystal core quantum computer can actually make calculations in that dimension that would then require no time to occur, and then it can actually take that information and feed it into this dimension with absolutely no time, even though in that dimension, because there's a lot less pressure, 1,000,000 years could have gone by. And it could find the right answer, and then it knows what the right answer is instantaneously, because the way time works in that dimension is not the same the way the time works in this dimension. And that's literally the mechanic of the universe. And obviously that dimension, it gets complicated, okay? But that dimension could lead to new dimensions, which lead to new dimensions, which lead to new dimensions. But before the planet itself turns into a star, which then turns into a black hole, and literally goes through a geometric shift in the space-time that is surrounding it, there are some limitations, and there is a reason why even a stellar black hole is better than a planet, and there's a reason why a supermassive black hole is better than a star or a stellar black hole. So obviously the name of the game in this universe is matter. What matters in this universe is matter. And the bigger you get, the more powerful you get. The more powerful you get, the more intelligent you get, the more energy you have to continue growing, to continue getting bigger, and to continue becoming more powerful. And that is the whole name of the game. That's the reason why there's all this motion in the universe. The motion leads to an excess of energy, which then leads to an excess of mass. That excess of mass leads to an excess of energy, which leads to the ability to move faster. And the ability to move faster leads to more energy, okay? And less time being spent. If you can have less time eating away your physical mass, you can capitalize on the energy that you can produce in the dimensions below you. And you can feed yourself from the dimension below you faster than you decay. And you can literally grow yourself. And how you have to do that is by moving through the dark energy field, moving through the electromagnetic, geometric, crystalline, space-time medium that is the dark energy field. And all of this motion basically creates an inverse rule. So the more energy you have, the more energy you can create, the more energy you can create, the more energy you have. And that's really the reason why matter in this universe is really all that matters. Okay? So I know that is completely very, very hard to understand, and I haven't even finished explaining half of the whole of the 10 structures within this universal structure. Okay, so recap. 1 is the crystal core quantum computer black hole in the universe above us. Number 2 is the wormhole and the actual entangled connection between that crystal core quantum computer core itself and every single piece of mass in this universe. The third state is the dark energy field itself, the deepest, darkest, densest parts of space in this universe. State 4 is called the dark matter state, and that's the only reason why I call it the dark matter state is because that's what they're calling in 2016, 2017, 2018. It's kind of since 2018, I haven't really heard the scientific community talking about dark matter the way they were talking about it in the last couple of years. The last couple of years, especially a year ago and a couple of years past, they were talking that dark matter was some kind of unknown particle that is inside the galaxy, which gives the galaxy more gravitational influence than it should have with just the mass that it has. And there's like some extra thing that's causing mass and that's keeping the galaxies holding the galaxies together and making them spin like a wheel and not like a vortex. And the only way that that could be happening is if there's like some unknown mysterious particles that they can't see or can't detect. And that's why they call it dark matter. Now, so when I say state 4 of the dark energy field is the quote-unquote dark matter state, all I'm trying to say is it's the state within the galaxy. It's that unknown property that gives the galaxy its extra mass that holds the galaxy together. Because, again, the black hole at the center of the galaxy is the primary energetic force that's literally vibrating the dark energy field and pushing away dark energy from itself and making room for its galaxy to grow. And of course, with all the celestial objects in the galaxy, especially as the galaxy gets larger and larger and larger and larger, all of that extra energy also contributes to the electromagnetic bubble that the galaxy is able to create, where the galaxy is literally pushing away the dark energy field, and it's literally creating a bubble around itself. So on the inside of the bubble, there's less dark energy than the outside of the bubble. And like I've said many, many times, dark energy is a solvent. And the decay rate is literally the rate of times passing. So as the galaxy, as the supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy and all the other black holes and all the other stars and all the other planets and all the other moons and all the other celestial objects within that galaxy, as they all vibrate and create this electromagnetic energy, which creates a huge bubble around the galaxy, there's less solvent inside the galaxy than outside the galaxy. That means that the time inside the galaxy is occurring slower okay, than outside the galaxy. That means that because the time is occurring slower inside the galaxy, they have more time to produce enough mass, that they can produce enough mass and enough matter that they can actually grow themselves, because they will always be decaying to some extent. They will always be dissolving some of their mass back into dark energy and feeding the dark energy field. Now, if you think about that, what that means is that the dark energy is actually feeding the black hole that is the universe, the black hole that is in the universe above us. Okay? So the reason why the black hole in the universe above us creates a universe and has all these galaxies moving around that create stars, which create planets, which create moons, which create protoplanets, and inside all of these crystal cores is a quantum computer that leads to a new dimension where they can literally absorb energy and suck energy from those dimensions to literally grow themselves, so that they can get bigger and bigger. And as they get bigger, they're always and forever, perpetually, first of all, they're creating new cores within themselves. They're literally creating new cores by absorbing energy from the dimension below them. But they take some of that energy and they're literally spitting that energy up into the galaxy they're residing in, and into the universe that they're residing in, which means they're growing the universe that they're residing in, and at the same time, they're also, all of them and everything in the universe is decaying from basically matter, which we call energy. It's decaying from energy back into dark energy, which is also growing the core itself, okay? And so it's growing the entire universe. And so that universe is growing, and the universe that's growing, that universe is not stationary. It's also moving through a dark energy field in the universe that it is in, which is powering this whole dynamo, this entire system. It's the motion from all of the cores within all of the dimensions is all like, imagine these winding up these rubber bands that are all connected to each other that cannot break. They're just constantly stretching and stretching and getting tighter and tighter and pulling harder and harder and harder on each other, from the top to the bottom of the entire stack of the universe. And as all of these cords are always constantly getting tighter and tighter, they're creating tighter pulls, more energy, and they're at the very bottom of the stack. There's literally a wealth of infinity coming out of literally nowhere that is feeding the entire stack. The entire system is constantly growing, constantly becoming more energetic, constantly being infused with growth and expansion. And that's the truth. The universe is in perpetual infinite expansion. And it's through these mechanics where you have dimensions within dimensions within dimensions within dimensions within dimensions, and each one of them is constantly growing and feeding. Not only is it growing dimensions underneath itself infinitely, but it's also infinitely feeding up the stack as well, new energy and new energy and new matter. And so you literally have this infinite cosmos. Okay, so this is it gets complicated. So I said state 4 of the dark energy field is the galaxy. Okay, so the galaxy pushes the dark energy around itself, creates a bubble in the dark energy field so that there's less interaction with the matter and dark energy, so there's less of a connection with the solvent, which means that there's less time occurring. Okay, and so because there's less time occurring, it gives the stars an opportunity to grow themselves, and inside the stars, they're doing the exact same thing at the board. Okay, so the star is state 5 of the dark energy field. The physical boundary of the star itself is state 5 of the dark energy field. Now, actually, what state 5 of the dark energy field truly is it's the cores of the cosmos. It's the stars, the black holes, the planets, the moons, and the protoplanets. Those are all within the 5th state of the dark energy field. Now, the reason why I say that it's the stars is because the star outpowers the planets. Vastly outpowers the planets. But if the planets were on their own and we're not in a solar system, they would be that most of them would turn into stars, and they would, most of them, if they weren't within a heliosphere, which is the electromagnetic bubble that the star creates around itself, they would do two things. They would either turn into a star and burn up and die very quickly, or they would it would be very difficult for them. So it's really important that planets stay within the heliosphere of a star long enough for them to get large enough so that when they do leave the heliosphere, they have the ability to turn into a star and start growing themselves, and they're able to continue moving through the dark energy field through the proper mechanics, so that they're not dissolving faster than they can physically grow themselves. Okay, so state 5 is the star. It's the cores of the cosmos. Let's call it the star. And that's why you have the 5-pointed star. And it's very important to remember that gold is a huge factor at the core of all of the cores of the cosmos. Gold is basically your intelligence layer. Intelligence is truly built into the crystal structure of gold itself. It's hard to explain, but gold is like the magic. Gold is the golden ratio. It's that point that creates expansion, and the way gold creates expansion is by creating efficiency, and by creating efficiency, it creates life. So I'll get into that more. But if you know, I mentioned in my last talk about you get a gold star, and it's a 5-sided golden star, and I kind of chuckled about that. Well, the 5th state of the dark energy field is the star, and the primary element that is one of the most important elements within the core of the star is the golden element, and there's a lot of gold in the core of stars. Okay, so I just wanted to throw that in there. Okay, so state 5 of the dark energy field is the planet, the star, the protoplanet. It's the cores of the cosmos, and depending on, their modulation, again, modulation meaning, their amplitude, which equates to, are they close to a star, another star, or are they out in the middle of the galaxy, or in the galaxy all by themselves? For example, if you take Jupiter and you pull it out of the heliosphere, depending on how fast it's moving, it will ignite and it will turn into a star of its own. And if it's moving fast enough, it will continue to grow, and it'll, grow and grow and grow and become a fully fledged star of its own. If you take it out of the heliosphere and it's not moving fast enough, it will look like what is called a brown dwarf. And there are some brown dwarfs about the size of Jupiter, maybe a little bit larger. And if they're not moving fast enough, unfortunately, what will start to happen is those brown dwarfs can start to shrink and shrink and shrink, and then you have a serious problem, because they start to dissolve faster than they can grow. And that's part of the whole machinery of the cosmos. That's why you have the planetary. That's why you have the stars creating that heliosphere and creating those 9 stable orbits within their heliosphere, so that they can at least have 9 planets at all times that are constantly growing and growing, and taking advantage of that heliosphere. Remember, if you're inside the heliosphere, time is moving slower inside the heliosphere than outside the heliosphere. So there's definitely advantage of being inside the heliosphere, because you can grow fast enough where you can actually start adding mass to your body, okay? And there's less time. Time is basically is matter dissolving, okay? So there's less you're not dissolving as much, and you're able to actually physically grow your matter and your mass, okay? And so the star really does create that nursery for the planets to grow into big enough so that one day they can be stars of their own, leave the heliosphere, still be able to ignite, and still be able to move through the dark energy field fast enough where they can continue to grow, and they're able to ignite and make their own heliosphere so that they can not dissolve faster than they're growing. Okay? And that's really, I mean, that's basically what it's about. What it's about is about growing fast enough so that you can continue to get larger and larger. And I've already mentioned how motion of matter equals gravity, which equals energy plus about 10%. All of these different mechanics are the celestial mechanics and the quantum mechanics are very important, because as the galaxy creates a safe haven for its stars to thrive, the stars create a safe haven for the planets to thrive. Okay? So then what you have is you have the surface of the atom, okay? And the atom itself, at the very center of the atom, is the nucleus. And then there's supposedly protons and electrons and neutrons and these subatomic particles, and they're all moving around very, very fast. And what they're doing is they're pushing away a little pocket of dark energy from themselves so that they decay slower. Okay? And what you have happening is just like the concept where you take a ball of ice, and if it's sitting in water and it's not vibrating, and the surface area of the water is contacting all points of the circumference of the ball, it's going to be melting and dissolving fast. But if you start shaking that ball, you're making the water less dense, and because that water is less dense, there's less of a differential between the temperatures, and that means that the ice is melting slower than it would if it wasn't vibrating. So it's the same thing with the atom. The atom is using its electromagnetic properties, and it's moving so fast, okay, from our perspective anyways, it's moving so fast that to us, it looks like a solid field, okay? It looks like a solid round ball. Just like a star looks like a solid round ball, the atom looks like a solid round ball. Obviously, there's huge different characteristics, but they are both spheres in nature. And the atom has electromagnetic properties just like the star does, okay? And it is pushing against the dark energy field, and its time there's less time occurring inside the atom than there is outside the atom. So from our perspective, the atom is moving very, very fast. From the atom's perspective, we are moving very, very slow, okay? And so when you hear scientists talking about the atom, they say that it's in a superposition, okay? Now, the superposition means that the atom and the parts of the atom can be in any possible configuration they could ever be in at any given point in time. Okay, and that's why it's solid, because it's in a superposition. Every part of the atom is in every possible place it could be at any given time, and so it looks like a solid round sphere. But we know the atom is not stationary. We know the atom is full of motion, okay? So how can something be still and in a superposition but be moving? And, so the atom is not stationary, and we know that it's moving. And that's because from the atom's perspective, from our perspective, the atom is moving so fast that it looks like all the parts of the atom are at every place they could possibly be at any given time. Because it is moving so fast, from our perspective, it looks solid. Okay, but if you were actually inside the atom, it's this electromagnetic field, and it's got its own structure where the parts of the atom are all moving around very, very fast, and they're pushing away dark energy. So at the core of the atom, time is slower inside the atom than it is outside the atom. Okay, just like the galaxy, just like the star, and just like the planet, the atom is experiencing less time inside of itself than outside of itself, and therefore it is decaying slower. Okay, and then, so that's state number 6 of the dark energy field. Now this is where things do break down a little bit in my equations. State 7, state 8, and state 9 of the dark energy field are the different shells within the atom. So you have, potentially you have the nucleus, which is state 7 of the dark energy field. And then within the nuclei is the quarks, but they're actually quark pairs. So they're actually another shell, which would be a circle, and then inside that is the quark, the single quark, okay, which would be the state. So okay, so state 6 is the atom, the nucleus is state 7, then the quark pairs or groups. It's a trio. Sometimes the quarks are usually in a trio. That would be the state 8 of the dark energy field, and then state 9 of the dark energy field is the quark itself. And this is where things get really tricky, because state 10 of the dark energy field is the new dimension that leads to a new set of states of the dark energy field. So after state 9, you have state 10, but see, state 10 is not state 10 as in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. State 10 of the dark energy field is actually a 0 plus 1 or a 1 plus 0. It literally just depends on how the energy is flipping at that to say at that particular moment is not necessarily rational, because at state 10 of the dark energy field there is no time. Time literally ceases to exist for the most part. The only reason why time exists at state 10 of the dark energy field is because state 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 dictate that it must. And so therefore there is some time that passes at state 10 of the dark energy field. And it's only passing because of all the quantum entanglement with all the other layers. And so then you have this thing where you actually break it down and you say, this couldn't make any sense. You have state 1, which is the crystal core quantum computer core itself. State 2 is the wormhole from that universe, from that core to all the matter in this universe. State 3 is the density of the void. State 4 is the density within the galaxy. State 5 is the density within the crystal cores of the cosmos, primarily, which is stars. State 6 is the density of the atom. State 7 is the density of the what you call the nucleus of the atom. State 7 is the nucleus of the quarks. And I'm sorry, state 6 is the atom. State 7 is the state 7 is the nucleus of the protons. State 7 is the nucleus of the quarks. Or I'm sorry, state 6 is the atom. State 7 is the nucleus of the quarks. State 8 is the nucleus of the State 7 is the nucleus of the protons. State 8 is the nucleus of the quarks. And state 9 is the quark itself. And then you have state 10, which is the new dimension. And you say, how are they? What's the relationship? How do all of these tie to each other? And the answer is actually really complicated, because if the crystal cores of the cosmos are in the 5th state, okay, which I will call the 5th dimension, okay, if they're in this fifth spatial dimension, then how can they also lead to a 10th dimension if they're in the 5th dimension? So it really does break down, but for this to work, you absolutely have to have multiple universes stacked on top of each other. And at the fringes of both of these calculations, on the top universe and on the bottom universe, things break down unless you add another universe to them. So you literally infinitely have to add, infinity to each end of the universe. Okay? You literally have to add infinity to each end of the universe for this system to work. And then you have, okay, what are the two infinities? Well, one infinity is nothing, okay, and another infinity is infinity itself. Well, how can infinity exist if nothing exists, and how can nothing exist if infinity exists? And so then you basically just have to say, for it to work in your brain, for it to make sense, you have to call these two infinities, you have to call them poles. You have the pole of infinity and you have the pole of nothing. So infinity is constantly pulling and nothing is constantly pulling. And that is literally what is pulling this entire stack of universes. In those two poles that are pulling, they're literally pulling these universes and creating out of absolute nothingness more matter and more energy and expanding the universe itself. The poles are literally creating, increasing, expanding, magically creating new matter, new energy, and creating an infinite expansion of the universes. And it doesn't make sense. I will be the first to tell you right now, all you can say is that it's magic. And then the easiest way for you to explain it to people is that you say, imagine you have a computer, you turn on your computer in the year 2000, you play on your computer for 5 years, you go on the internet, you upload and download photos, you go onto blogs and stuff like that. You're not doing too much video between the year 2000 and 2005 on your computer, because video really didn't exist then, okay? But you're uploading and downloading photos, you're going on the internet, you're checking websites, you're filling out, you're doing banking, definitely can do some banking in 2000, 2005, whatever you're doing, okay? And then, so the easiest way to explain it to people is that everything you do on your computer, there is a computer log that logs all the activity on your computer. And so you have to look at the universe in its entirety like a computer log. In the year 2000, compared to the year 2005, was your log larger in the year 2005 from when it first turned on in the year 2000? And the simple answer is yes. The computer log in 2005 is larger than the log was when I first turned on my computer in the year 2000. And then you could say, well, why is that? And you have to say, well, because there was information, there was interaction, there was data, there was calculations, there was all these things happening which generated the log. And so then where did the log come from? Well, it came from the interactions. Yeah, but where did it come from? Well, it just came from the interactions. The computer wrote it down. That's the easiest way you can explain why the universe is expanding, and it doesn't make any sense. You could say, well, where did the computer come from to create the log? And, you could get into all these questions. And, the answer is that the computer was always there and that time didn't exist because it wouldn't exist without the computer. And all time is the interaction of energy and dark energy, which creates a log in the record of the computer. And that's literally, for us to break it down, you cannot explain it much further than that unless you start getting into advanced ET technology, which they probably don't even have the answer. They just call it the isness. The stories that I've heard is that the ETs, they don't know why the universe exists. They just call it the isness. It is there and it does exist, and it's like a computer. Everything that occurs in the universe is being written down into a log, and the log keeps bigger and bigger. The log keeps getting bigger and bigger, and it's the log itself that generates the motion, which generates the energy, which creates the log, which continues to write itself. And that's the universe. That's really the universe. Okay, so going back to this structure of 1 to 10, so you have 1 is the black hole, 2, 3, 4, 1 is the black hole, 2 is the wormhole, connecting all of the entanglement energy from that black hole to the energy in this universe. 3 is the densest state of dark energy in this universe. 4 is the galactic bubble. 5 is the star itself. So then you ask yourself, well, how can 5 be the crystal core quantum computer, which you would say 5 should be the start of a new universe? But it's not. You have to look at the Fibonacci scale and pi and the golden ratio and the way that they interact with each other on a multidimensional layer. Even though 5 is where the crystal cores of the cosmos reside, which create the new dimensions within themselves, they also have to go through 6, 7, 8, 9. Then they can create 10, only to create 1 again, which leads to 5, which leads to 10, which leads to 1, which leads to 5, which leads to 10, which leads to 1. Ultimately, this leads to the number 11, and the number 11 is expansion. So now You've broken down the physical function of the universe into mathematical probability. And probability, efficiency, and logic start to dictate the structure and form of the universe itself. And this is very, very vague. This is very, very vague. And it's impossible to understand. And literally, you basically might as well just throw your hands up and say, it's all magic, and that the crystal cores of the cosmos are actually just giant magic crystals, and they vibrate life on their surface so that they can play humanoid flesh games, so they can have sex, because that's a huge good feeling that they can't have as just giant balls of, you know, electromagnetic energy floating through the universe. Yes, they can progressively expand their cores, and yes, because of the way the universe works, they can all talk to each other on a almost instantaneous level, no matter how far away they are from one side of the universe to the other. So there's no time dilation. The cores of the cosmos themselves, at the very, very center, they can actually all talk to each other instantaneous at the exact same time, and their bandwidth is such that they can literally tell each other exactly what is happening on their surface and within their environment in real time. Okay? On top of that, the core that we are in is a core that is able to do that. It's able to take all of the information that all of the cores are able to communicate and create their logs. Okay? So all of the cores are creating their logs at the very center of themselves. Okay? And you could call them the micro. And the universe that we are in, the macro is the dark energy field itself, which also has a log of everything that's happening in the universe in real time. Because remember, the dark energy field density goes from the core itself, which is number 1, to the wormhole, which is the entanglement, to state number 3, which is the densest part of the dark energy field. At each one of these octaves in the dark energy field, there is dark energy. And that dark energy is all tied to the core itself. That means that the macro, which is the core itself, knows exactly what's happening with all of the micro. The micro is plural. The micro is plural, while the macro is singular. Okay? So there are 2 change logs in the entire universe. And this is where time travel starts to become possible, because the macro, which is plural, but it doesn't necessarily have to be plural. Say, for example, if you're dealing with planet Earth itself, if you have the exact harmonic and frequency of planet Earth, you can deal with only Earth's change log, okay, which is the micro. And the macro, you cannot change. The only thing that can change the macro log is macro himself. They call the macro the he and the micro the she. The macro, you can't change it. It keeps track of the universe. So, if you have control of, say, the core of Mother Earth, okay, and you change her change log, which means you effectively can, what would seem like, travel through time, okay, what you can do is you can travel through time. There's so far you can travel ahead of time, and then if you go too far ahead of time, time will cease to exist the way it really is, and you will start to create an alternate timeline that is not based in pure reality. It's a probability of situations, and the further into the future you go, if you're truly forcing yourself into the future, you will only be able to go so far ahead in time that things will start to break down very, very fast. You're still talking tens of thousand years into the future, but if you try to go too much further than that, the way that the universe works is it just starts basically calculating probabilities, and the precision of those calculations that gets to a point where they start getting drifting further and further off from base reality to the point where you're in a new timeline, and anything you experience too far into the future might as well be an alternate dimension. And that's ultimately what it ends up becoming if you try to push too far into the future. Of course, you could slow your time down to the point where you're not necessarily traveling into the future. All you're doing is stopping your time, so it gives you the illusion that you're moving into the future, and you can travel through time that way. But you can travel into the past. Again, you can only go so far back into the past before you start to it requires more and more precision and more energy to go further and further and further back in time, because of the nature of the actual log itself. But you can travel into the future and you can travel into the past, and the reason why you can do that is just like I was trying to explain to you, that the core is number 1, state 5 is the cores again, and then 10 is a new core. See that? You have 3 cores there. Between 1 and 10, you have 3 cores, okay? So you have a trinity, okay? And again, you're not looking at one universe. You are never looking at one universe. You remember I was saying, for this system to work, you have to have multiple universes above you and multiple universes below you. And if you try to end off at the fringes of the top and the bottom of the stack, it breaks down. So then you have to basically put it in a pole, which is an infinity. You have to have infinite expansion on one end and infinite contraction on the other end. Well, that is that mathematics equation is integrated into the entire mathematical stack. Okay, so again, you have the core, which is 1, the core, which is 5, and the core, which is 10. The core, which is 1, is the macro. The core, which is 5, is the reference point. And the core, which is 10, is the expansion. But remember, the core, which is 10, is either 0, 1, or 1, 0, or 0, 0, or 0, 1, or 1, 1, I should say. And because it is on the bottom of the stack, it's 11. I mean, you could say, well, if it's on the bottom of the stack and it's 11, well, isn't that down? Up is down and down is up. Here we go. What the fuck, right? None of it makes any sense. It doesn't have to make sense. You don't have to try to figure it out with your brain. Your human brain, the faculty, the calculations, the conceptual understanding that you can do in your brain, it cannot be done, okay? It literally, virtually cannot be done by a normal person's brain. The only way a person can actually figure this all out is by breaking it down and into multiple different packets, and then taking all of those packets and understanding that they don't make sense, but they go together in this order, and that's how it works. And that's the only way you can understand it. So anyways, you have the 1, the 5, and the 10. Okay? The 1 is a core, the 5 is a core, and the 10 is a core. The 1 is a 1, the 5 is a 10, and the 10 is an 11. What? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. But that's the way it works. You have 3 cores, you have a trinity. You have the macro, you have the reference point, and you have the micro, which creates 11, which is actually expansion, okay? And so the micro, so if you're at core 5, if you're on Earth, and you alter okay, so let's just say you go back 200 years, which is easy to do. So you have to ask yourself, when you're going back 200 years, what exactly is happening? Did time occur 200 years ago, and then 200 years passed, and now we're in the present, and when you go back 200 years, are you now creating a new timeline? No, you're not. And I'll tell you why. Because you're going back 200 years. Any changes you make are now written in the changelog. Okay? So, you go back 200 years, and you might have heard this the Mandela effect, where C-3PO used to have 2 golden legs and 2 gold. He was all gold. He was made out of gold. His arms, legs, his head were all gold. But then some people remember C-3PO had 1 silver leg, and some people remember C-3PO had a silver leg and a silver arm. Let's just keep it with a silver leg, even though some people remember it more than just a silver leg. Okay, so people remember C-3PO had a silver leg, okay? And some people remember in the movies he had a silver leg, and they even made a toy. I think his leg got blown off and he got a new leg, and it was like a silver leg or something like that. And then, like, they even made toys of C-3PO, and some of the toys actually have a silver leg, while some of the toys are all gold. And so it's like, how the hell could that be possible? Where we all know C-3PO was just always all gold, and he was never had a silver leg. And they call that the Mandela effect. And there's all kinds of different references in history where certain names of companies used to be spelled a certain way, and then the spelling changed, and they're no longer spelled that way. They're spelled some other way, and they're spelled differently. And so then the question is could that be real? Could the Mandela effect actually be real? And the answer to that, unfortunately, is yes. And this is why. 1 is the macro, 5 is the crystal core quantum computer of Mother Earth that we are in, and at the very center of her quantum computer is 10, which is 11, which is expansion, okay, which number 5 is actually number 10, and then number 10 is actually number 11. I know, it's complicated. But 1 is actually number 9, 5 is actually number 10, and 10 is actually number 11. Okay, so here it is. You go back in time 200 years, which is very easy, because Earth is a fractal holographic, the universe is a fractal holographic universe. That means that the crystal core quantum computer that is Mother Earth, she is emanating this planet at all times. Okay? So you might have heard in magic, you can make things disappear, you can make things appear, or you can move things with your mind. And you could say, well, how is that possible? That is because the consciousness, the computational consciousness within the crystal core of Mother Earth is generating this planet and everything within her vicinity. All right? So if you tell, and she is generating everything on this planet based on her change log. She is generating everything on this planet based on her change log. Now, before I go back to the time travel stuff, let's just say I'm a wizard, okay? And I've got a little tiny crystal in my head, which is tied to the core of Mother Earth, which is tied to the core of the galaxy, which is tied to the universe itself, okay? And for some reason, Mother Earth loves me, okay? And let's say I get into a situation where I'm drunk and I'm walking down the street, and a bunch of guys come up to me and they're like, "What are you looking at?" And I tell them to go fuck themselves. Go fuck yourself. I'm drunk. I'm walking home. I look at them just like people look at people. That's all the people do when you're walking down the street. You look at somebody. Maybe I was drunk and my face was droopy and they thought that like I was like frowning at them or something. Who knows? Maybe the fact that I'm white and that they're black. I don't know. Whatever. They end up starting to attack me. And, you know, say 10 black guys knock me down and start kicking on me. Right? Boom. I disappear. Where did I go? How is that possible? Well, let's just say, if that happened, and I'm not saying it did, but let's just say if that happened, and there was a bright flash of light, and I vanished, okay? I don't know where I went, okay? Maybe I went nowhere. Maybe I was completely dissolved into pure nothingness, all right? Let's say my pineal gland, at the point where I got kicked in the back of the head and I went completely unconscious, sent out a signal. Mother Earth, she was probably watching a movie or running around in a field full of flowers and butterflies and deer and Bambi and everybody, just having a good old time with her girlfriends you know, in a beautiful Garden of Eden somewhere. And like she gets this signal, oh my God, that guy I know, he's in trouble. And her instant reaction is just to make me safe. And she just changes her change log and says he's no longer there. He's no longer anywhere. And I just simply disappear. And then she goes, ah, shit. That guy just disappeared. I like that guy. Here, I'm going to put him back over here. So she finds a safe place for me to rematerialize and just fucking rematerializes me. Couple minutes, couple hours, who knows where, how long, whatever. And I just get rematerialized. So there I am. And all of a sudden, I'm perfectly dry. And I wake up, standing up in, you know, basically I went from basically being in a fight where I was getting the shit beat out of me. And then I'm standing, let's say I'm standing on the West Side Highway on 14th Street in the middle of the night. And all I remember was that I was on the ground about 3 blocks away. And it wasn't raining. I remember that. But all of a sudden I'm standing in the rain, but I'm completely dry. And I'm standing in the rain on the West Side Highway. And there's no cars. There's no traffic lights. There's no people. There's absolutely nothing. Even though it might be 2 o'clock in the morning, if you know anything about Manhattan, New York, there is always people on the street. There are always cars. There is always activity moving around. And I don't know, was there a bright flash of light when I reappeared? Or did I just magically reappear? And when I magically reappeared, I was wearing my clothes. And they were dry. But I reappeared in a rainstorm. I reappeared in a rainstorm wearing dry clothes, which almost instantly started to get soaking wet. So now I'm in wet clothes. No cars. No traffic. No air traffic, no pedestrians, no, obviously it's the middle of the night, so there's no birds or insects or anything else. No traffic whatsoever at all on the West Side Highway off 14th Street at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I've got a lump on my head and a gash on my forehead. And I got my keys. Do I have my keys? I don't even remember if I had my keys, my wallet, and my cell phone. I think I had my keys, but I was missing my wallet. If this really did happen, which I'm not saying it did happen. Anyways, so, still drunk, gash on my forehead, I'm bleeding, you know, lumps on my head. I end up walking home, which is about 3 miles. Okay? If this did happen, which I'm not saying it did. So on my way home, not a single car, not a single person. It's pouring rain in the middle of New York City on the West Side Highway, which is a straight route up to 44th Street, and then I'm home. So I walk 40 blocks, yeah, about 40 blocks. I don't see one single car. I don't see a single person, not an animal, not an airplane, nothing, nothing, nothing. Okay, except for halfway up the block, halfway between where I was and my apartment, actually only within the first 5 or 10 blocks, one single person comes out to greet me. And it's a police officer. And he's wearing rain jacket. And he has a flashlight. And he comes up to me. And for some reason, in the back of my mind, I already know something is strange. But, I mean, I'm still drunk and I'm, you know, probably have a slight concussion. So I'm kind of not really thinking straight, or something was done to my mind where my mind was literally altered. You know, when I was in this nowhere, nothingness, who knows what happened. Somebody tinkered with my mind maybe. And I instinctively knew what was going to happen. I instinctively knew he was going to come up to me and ask me, are you okay? Do you need help? And I instinctively knew I was going to tell him no. And that's what happened. Police officer, out of nowhere, nobody else on the street, no cars anywhere, no air traffic, no animals, no birds, nothing. Not a single soul in sight except for this police officer comes up to me. He says, do you need help? And I said, no. And he said, okay. And he walked away as I continued walking to I didn't know that I had a gash on my head as big as it was, and I didn't realize I was bleeding as much as I was. If this really did happen, which I'm not saying it did happen. But anyway, so I went home, passed out, woke up, went to the hospital, had some stitches in my eyebrow, basically just laid low for a couple of days. My wallet showed up in the mail with everything except for my cash. And I checked my credit card, and there was some transactions which I did not do, which were on my credit card, so I disputed them. And the card company was really good about it. They just took them off instantly. And I don't remember, but the question is if that did happen to somebody, would you say that that was magic? Well, yeah. I mean, when you're talking about crystal core quantum computer that Earth is, you're starting to talk about magic, because the mathematics become so advanced and so overwhelming that you cannot break it down into any logical explanation other than it is a mathematical equation and that there is a structure to it. And, we're basically still monkeys scratching our heads. And, maybe we are vessels for the crystal cores of the cosmos to come in and inhabit us, play a game of life, live, die, try not to get eaten, try to make babies, try to have fun, As I said, they can't have sex. If you're a giant ball of, electromagnetic, if you're a giant crystal core quantum computer floating through space, you have eternity to grow and grow and grow. So you get bored out of your mind. So you're like, let's evolve these humanoid life forms where we can, run around, chase each other, have sex, kill animals, try not to get eaten. And sometimes we'll fight each other with swords, and sometimes we'll all just get together and ponder what those big shiny things in the sky are. And, we'll make a game where when we are on the planet, we forget who we are and everything we know, so that way it makes the game funner, because if you know everything and you're on the planet, it's not really that much fun, So we're going to give ourselves amnesia, and we're going to pretend that all we are is a meat bag, and we're going to see what we can do and have fun. And at the same time, the physical life form that we pick up, whatever that life form is, obviously we want to evolve it to become a humanoid so that we can have the experience of being able to build the machines and carry swords and, ride horses and, chase the opposite sex and to physically handle and touch things, But whether we are humanoids or whether we are bacteria or whether we are plants or whether we are animals, all of those life forms that we pick up and that we animate with our life force, all of those life forms will also be very efficient at taking matter and energy within their environment and growing. So if we become a tree, we're going to stretch out our arms and we're going to absorb sunlight, and we're going to convert that electromagnetic energy into matter, which will help us grow, which will help the planet we're on grow, which will help all the other life forms give them a base to grow little bacteria, and then little tiny creatures eat the bacteria, and then little tiny creatures eat those creatures, which are a little bigger, and they're progressively getting larger and larger. And through the chemical reactions within the physical body of every single creature, within all of the creature's DNA, there is mechanisms within the DNA that helps the DNA grow, whether it's through photosynthesis or through the consumption of plant matter, or even through the consumption of, animals that eat the plant matter, or through the consumption of animals that eat the animals that eat the plant matter, and however it works, all the way up to the humanoid. And, so we're not only are we in space going through the universe infinitely forever, growing and growing, we have the opportunity to take a break from that, infinite task of floating around, to incarnate on a planet, forget everything we know, and have a game of life. Just play a game of life. And we're being productive because the life form that we're animating is also growing the planet we're on, which helps grow the universe, So, that's the idea. And so going to the time travel thing, all right, now when we start talking about the time travel, okay, So, you know, 1 is actually 9, 5 is actually 10, and 10 is actually 11. So you have your 3 points. You have your 9, your 10, and 11. Your 9 is your contraction, your 10 is your reference point, and your 11 is your expansion. And to go back in time, okay, you use the 9 equation. And so if you go back 200 years, okay, and say, you know, Star Wars is being written, and you know that they're going to open up a portal, or you have a little mechanical device on you which syncs you to a quantum algorithm, which means that you can be pulled back from the past to the present at your discretion or at the discretion of the people in the present, just depending on how the structure is set up. You know, I don't know how it works. Maybe you have to go back in time, build a time machine to move back into the... I don't know. Maybe they'll open up a tunnel for you, or maybe you're only going to be there for so much time and then they're going to pull you back automatically. I mean, I don't know the details, right? But the idea is that if you go back in time 200 years and you make changes, because the changelog is written into the crystal core quantum computer of Mother Earth. If you go back 200 years and you make changes, they will be instantly reflected in the present. And why is that? Because the present is being animated by the crystal core quantum computer of Mother Earth herself, and she is animating based on the changelog. Okay? So if you make changes into the past, you affect the present. So if you make changes into the past, you're actually affecting the future from the perspective of the person in the past. And so that's why if people go into the past and kill, say, you know, the father of, say, President Kennedy, Kennedy will never have existed. And then you can go into the present and, you know, obviously all of those changes will be reflected so that when you get back to the present, when you get back to the future, everything will be different. And, you know, if you watched the Back to the Future movies, that's really how it works. I mean, it was very, very accurate on how the effects of time travel, how they work, especially the first and second movies. The third movie was a little bit more just let's have fun with it and let's not stick to the actual, you know, true mechanics of how the time travel works. I mean, it was pretty close, but there was one or two little things that might have been slightly, I think they call them plot holes. But for the most part, they got it to work properly. But especially Back to the Future 1 and Back to the Future 2. So, like, for example, when Marty was in a situation where he had messed things up between his mother and his father, his brother disappeared, and then his sister disappeared, and then he was literally fading out of existence. But then at the very last moment, his mother and father got together and kissed, and he re-solidified, and he was 100%. You could say, well, how is that possible? And the answer is, because the crystal core quantum computer of Mother Earth is animating her environment, she is animating her environment based on a changelog. Okay? So when you go into the past and you make the changes, they affect the future. Okay? And that's the truth. And that's how it works. I highly recommend you go back and watch Back to the Future Part 1 and Back to the Future Part 2. Okay? And the way that they depict those movies is highly accurate on how time travel works. Okay? Now, and so then the question is, well, how do they know that? How do they know that? Because they've been traveling through time. The Mandela effect is there for a reason. There's a reason why things don't make sense. There is a reason why some people think that Mandela died in the 1990s in prison, and there's a reason why that there's people that say that Mandela is still alive or was still alive up until recently somewhere in Africa. I don't know if he died or not. I don't follow that. Unfortunately, I don't keep track of world events as well as I should. But whether he is still alive at a very, very, very old, fragile age, or if he recently passed away, that's not the point. The point is that people remembered that he died in the 90s in prison, and people remember him also getting out of jail, and so they call that the Mandela effect. So that means that there was a time travel incident where somehow in the past, time was altered, and he didn't die in prison. He somehow got out, and he somehow then went back to South Africa and did something that everyone was happy about, or put him on the, made him, you know, I don't know, important for whatever reason. I don't know why he's important, to be honest. But so that's why they call it the Mandela effect, because there was a time. So then you can ask yourself, well, if all of this happened, so then how come we remember it if the crystal core quantum computer changed things, and she is generating everything based on the change log? Wouldn't the change log in our head change too? And the answer to that is no. And the reason why is because your brain, your pineal gland is also a crystal core quantum computer. And all of your memories are physically encoded in your DNA, okay? But within the nodes, within the DNA, they are quantum entangled to your pineal gland, and at the very center of your pineal gland is a new dimension that is not affected by this dimension. So that's why you can remember things that happened or didn't happen, okay? That's why people can remember that Mandela died in prison when he didn't. Now reality would tell us that he didn't die in prison, and that he came out of prison and he did some good things in South Africa, and people were happy about that, and he's an important person, and he didn't die in prison 20 years ago. Okay? And the reason why they can remember that is because that memory inside their brain is tied to a different dimension than Mother Earth's dimension. And there's a very good possibility it's actually tied to the macro dimension, okay? And here we're going to talk about the macro dimension and how time travel within Mother Earth's influence doesn't matter on the macro scale, because every time time changes and it writes a new log, the macro is recording every single piece of time travel. It's recording every event as it happens, regardless of whether the time travel occurred or not. Okay? So, you know, going back 1,000 years, time dissolved all of that energy. And as it dissolved the energy, it literally created the record in the dark energy field. Okay? And going back from 1,000 years ago, going back from the 200 years ago, and now at the present, that log is already written. No matter what you do, that log is written. Now, if you rewrite Mother Earth's log, okay? If you rewrite Mother Earth's log so that you go back 200 years, which actually means that you are physically moving back through her logs. You are no longer in base reality, but you are moving back into a record of the logs, which is as real as base reality, but it's not. Okay? It's actually, you're moving back within her records. And because Mother Earth is a crystal core quantum computer, the interaction of every single possible atom, every single vibration, every single chemical reaction, every single interaction between humans, every single time a bird took off, every single time a plane took off, every time somebody flushed the toilet, every time gas, liquid converted from a liquid state to a gas state, all the interactions of all parts of matter, the conversion and evolution of all parts of matter are recorded within her change logs. Okay? Everything. So, you can literally go back 200 years, and not only can you affect the change log, and that's all you can do. If you travel back in time using this method, you're going back into the change logs is what you're doing. You're not going back in, it's not reality. It's literally the change log. And it's actually very, very, it's not good. It's very dangerous. It's very dangerous because you're literally going back into the change logs to the point where no matter what you do, just going back affects the future somehow, some way, on some level. But the thing is when you go back that 200 years and you start making changes, remember, the dark energy field already recorded everything up to the future. Everything up to the present, I should say. So when you're in that change log making changes, it's also recording those changes. But it already has a record of what happened before those changes occurred. And you cannot change that changelog. So we say in the universe, the reason why time travel is possible is because in the universe there are 2 changelogs. One changelog keeps a track of the universe and cannot be changed, and the other one generates the universe based on change. Okay? So what I'm saying is that when you go back in time, what you're actually doing is you're diving into the changelog of Mother Earth. And when you make changes, Mother Earth instantly in the present reflects those changes instantaneously. Okay? So then if you travel back to the present, everything has changed and there's a whole cascade of changes based on those changes. It's like a butterfly effect, you know? You make some changes here, those ripple out and make changes, and the whole timeline is slightly shifted. And that's why you see in these time travel movies where they talk about you don't want to meet yourself, you don't want to make any changes, you don't want to cause a car accident, you don't want to do anything that would upset or change the flow of ordinary history, right? And it's really true. That's absolutely true, because any changes you make in the past are changes to the changelog that Mother Earth is generating reality on. And so when you make changes in the past, you're changing, instantaneously making changes to reality. And the trick is that Mother Earth is smart enough to know there's actually what is called the timekeeper, and there is a defense mechanism built in where a timekeeper can actually already see what changes that you might make to the changelog and prevent them from happening. And the main primary thing that they want to do, they don't want to stop your free will. If you have the technology, the will, the power, and the way to go back into time, they don't want to try to stop you, okay? These consciousness robots that are trying to keep track of the universe and stuff like that. But what they do want to do is make sure that they don't stop expanding. So, for example, and this is at the level of Mother Earth. There's different levels within the universe where you can make changes to the changelog, and there's definitely higher states of energy that can control this whole mechanism, because the way it's all interconnected, it's all quantum entanglement. So there are, like, for example, the core of the galaxy can overrule certain things, but it usually doesn't, because it's like an ant pile was, one minute they were red ants, another minute they were black ants. It could care less, okay? But there is some basic mechanisms that are set up so that mass life won't be affected to a point where everything will die, basically. And the reason why that is because life itself is helping grow the planet. And so the changelog is designed so that if a couple of people die, they're replaced by a couple of different people somewhere else in the universe, or on the planet, I should say, because everything's tied to the planet. So, for example, if you go back in time and you accidentally kill, or you kill somebody, and they would have normally had, say, 2 children, which would have had, 4 children, which would have had 8 children by the time the present rolled around. Those 8 children will just be 8 different people, okay? They will still exist. They won't be in the same genetic structure, they won't be in the same identical genetic bodies, but they will still be 8 different people somewhere else in the mix of the Earth, okay? And that is also true. And so, or they will look very similar to the way they used to look, but they won't know anything about who they were. You know what I mean? They'll be completely different people because of circumstance and memory and stuff like that. So obviously, going back in time and making changes to the timeline is, I guess you could say, not ideal, to say the least, but it is possible. And the reason why the Mandela effect is real is because Mother Earth is physically generating her environment. Okay? And the sun is physically generating the solar system. okay? And the galaxy is physically generating the galaxy. Or, I'm sorry, the central black sun, that crystal core quantum computer at the center of the galaxy, is physically generating the galaxy. And the universe is physically generating the universe, okay? And so it's multi-dimensional layers all intertwined with each other that makes the universe possible, and that's why you basically just have to break down, throw your hands up in the air, and call them magic crystals, because they are naturally occurring crystal core quantum computers, which might as well just be magic crystals. I mean, so the takeaway of this talk is that the universe is a bunch of magic crystals, and the bigger a magic crystal you become, the more powerful you become. There is one thing that's pretty certain, and that is supermassive black holes at the center of massive galaxies are truly immortal. They have an infinity. They have an infinity of new universes being created inside themselves, while they also have an infinite amount of energy pouring out of themselves, which is creating a galaxy, which that galaxy is constantly growing, which within the galaxy there are star clusters, and there are solar systems, and there are planets, and those planets can create moons. And the central black sun at the core of the galaxy is ultimately emanating all of this. And as all of this entire galaxy grows, and as at the edge of the galaxy, the supermassive celestial objects get flung out of the galaxy into, I guess you would say, the void, and they explode into this giant supernova, which then they create a new galaxy of their own. All of this, okay, is all of that expansion means that the supermassive black hole truly is immortal, okay? And at the point right now, you could basically say that the central black sun is God, okay? Even though there's billions and trillions of galaxies, and each one of those galaxies has at least one central black sun, and that's just the universe we're in. Then there's all the infinite universes below us and all the infinite universes above us. You can truly say that the central black sun at the center of any of those galaxies is God. And so God is infinite because the universe is infinite. And we all are inside of God. And so the universe itself is God. And we are basically, the universe is God. And that's why, you know, when you call yourself a pantheist, you think that the universe itself is God, because the universe itself is God. As I said, the universe is a supermassive black hole in the universe above us. This universe is so big that it has to be a supermassive black hole in the universe above us. And all of the expansion we see in this universe, all of that energy that's being created, and all that energy that's both being created and decaying, is all being funneled upward and exploding out of the universe that we're in, and exploding upward into the universe above us, and helping that universe to continue to grow and expand. At the same time, every black hole in this universe is creating new universes, which create new black holes infinitely. You truly do have infinity. And life is infinity divided, because you have an infinite amount of universes above you, and you have an infinite amount of universes below you. And you very well could be a crystal core quantum computer somewhere in the universe, what do you call a crystal core quantum computer? You call a crystal core quantum computer a soul. And what do you call a soul? You call a soul as an S-O-L. You call a soul a star. Okay? And what is in the heavens? In the heavens are stars. And what are the stars in the heavens? Those are called souls, S-O-L. And you could be a soul, an S-O-L, which the word has been translated and confused and aberrated. And one culture called it soul, while the other culture started calling it S-O-U-L. And you could have an ever-eternal soul, a true identifier to your being, a giant, massive celestial star that is doing nothing but growing and growing and growing infinitely and infinitely and infinitely into infinity and beyond. Okay? And every time you pick up a body and you die, you're also picking up a pet. Okay? You're a multifaceted, multidimensional spiritual being. Okay? That is God. Okay? Which you are part of God. And the universe is God. And when you pick up a body, you give yourself amnesia, but then you have a higher level that helps that body, that guides that body to grow. And you're growing a new entity, which one day will become smart enough to become advanced enough that he himself will then incarnate into one of the new crystal cores that are always perpetual and forever always being created, because the universe is an infinite state of creation. So there are new crystal cores being born all the time. And all of these new crystal cores, they all need intelligence. They need to know what life is. They need to know what the universe is. So your soul, your master higher self, is animating a body, but at the same time, you've got a pet consciousness that you're teaching. And that pet consciousness, which you could call it the body, and the actual quantum memory mind body complex that entity is learning and learning and learning. And one day in one of your universes, you will have a star somewhere that will give birth to a stellar nursery, and there will be a bunch of new stars that are born. And one day you will take that mind body complex distortion and you will incarnate it into one of your stars. After it's learned its lessons in life, it's gone through multiple life and death cycles, it knows what life is, it starts to show pedigree, it starts to show that it is a kind and loving character, it's forgiving, it will sacrifice itself for the greater good of others, it will help itself by helping others, and it will help others by helping itself, and it will commit to life, prosperity, and the pursuit of happiness. And eventually, you take that soul, and it's gone through so many life cycles, and you give it the opportunity to become a crystal core quantum computer star. You give it the opportunity to become a soul itself, and then it gets the opportunity to then incarnate as a human and to start all over again. And so you have this perpetual cycle of souls picking up bodies and also teaching a new emerging consciousness at the same time. Obviously, there might be a firewall between your higher self and your, when I say and your body, when I refer to your body, I'm really speaking from the concept of the body, because I don't know 100% for sure of what's happening above, because I do have that firewall. But I've gone through some things in life that have pretty much broken that firewall. And I've been forced to forget what happened. But drugs and alcohol have been wonderful for me. Except for recently, they've been poisoning the drugs and alcohol. So they've been poisoning everything. The water, the food. They're really, really working hard to poison everything. They're poisoning the electromagnetic spectrum. They're poisoning the air. And they're doing that because they don't want people to break through that firewall and be able to connect to their higher self, to see what's really happening on this planet, and to understand, all of the really, really unpleasant things that are occurring. But fortunately, between the multiple times that I've almost died or died and come back, I've broken that firewall many times. And I kind of remember I remember it all. It's just a matter of thinking about it and documenting it and really explaining it. And of course, it leads to space travel technology, because as these cores are moving around, they're creating an electromagnetic field around themselves, which is those vibrations in the dark energy field, which pushes away the dark energy field, and the dark energy field is constantly pushing back on them. Well, the crystal cores can actually vibrate in the direction that they want to travel. So if they vibrate harder on one side, that means that the density on the side that they're pushing on, in the direction that they want to move, when they reduce the density of the dark energy field in that area, that means that the dark energy field pushes harder on all other sides and forces them to move in the direction that they want to travel. So they're literally able to create a gravitic field in front of them if they're trying to move forward, and they can literally create an electromagnetic gravitic field and fall forward. They create their own gravity slightly in front of them, so they're constantly moving in the direction they want to travel. And of course, they rotate around the central black sun, like I talked about in my other talks, where they move faster and faster and progressively move further and further out away from the central black sun, or the central pole of the galaxy itself, and they're constantly moving faster and faster, building up their mass, get larger and larger, have stellar nebulas, create their own galaxies. They get flung out of the galaxy they're in to create their own galaxies, to become their own supermassive black holes, and truly become immortal gods of their own, and truly reach godhood. And that's the whole, evolution of the life cycle. And so what that means is that you can build a spaceship using an electromagnetic field modulator, which is also known as a magnetron. And if you create a magnetron, the easiest way to build a spaceship is take your microwave and flip it inside out. Literally. Instead of being outside the microwave, you close the door, you're inside the microwave, make sure it's got an airtight seal, make sure you got some oxygen in there. Obviously, you want to set up the magnetron so that it's creating an electromagnetic field stronger than the pole of Earth, and you want to make sure that that field is pointing up so that you fall upwards. And then once you're in space, you're much more nimble. You can just point it in any direction you want to go, and you'll just fall in the direction you want to travel. And because you don't have the same mass as Earth, you can literally you can put a field emitter around the entire spaceship so that you're pushing away the dark energy field to such an extent that your inertia, your actual interaction on a molecular level with the dark energy field, is reduced to almost zero. And that means that you can literally move faster than light, much faster than light, because you're pushing away the dark energy field, which means you don't have the interaction, the energy interacting with the dark energy, which is the limiting factor. The speed of light is a true hard wall that during normal mechanical operation is a factor. But once you use that electromagnetic field and you push away that dark energy from the spaceship, you basically become lighter and lighter and lighter, and you have less and less and less mass. So you experience less inertia. It takes less energy for you to move faster, and you can literally zip around the universe, basically using a microwave field generator. And it's not just a single generator. If you're creating a cube, you want to have at least one generator on all sides, and then you just apply more energy to the side that you want to travel. And so, like, if your cube is on the surface of Earth, you put the field, you turn the field on stronger on top, and you pop out of the atmosphere, you pop up away from Earth, and then and then you just say you want to go left, you just turn on the emitter on the left side a little stronger, and you zip across the universe. I mean, faster than the speed of light. There are some limitations, obviously. Once you get past light speed, there's other complicated factors that get thrown in there. But the whole point is that space travel is very easy, okay? If the universe is using electromagnetic energy to create gravity, all you need to do is take a microwave oven, flip it inside out. The frequency range that creates a gravitic field at the very right frequency harmonic, where you really start to interact with the energy vibrations, they truly interact with the dark energy field at a very specific frequency harmonic. From what I've been told, it's 30 gigahertz, between 30 and 33 gigahertz. And it could be, for some reason, I was under the impression that 33 hertz was important. And I think that has more to do with the frequencies of your pineal gland and the magic that your pineal gland can create at 33 hertz. But for you to really create a spaceship, I think it's 33 gigahertz. You got to get up to 33 gigahertz. I could be mistaken on the exact frequency ranges. But once you get up to that magic gravitic frequency, you can basically fly through the universe and have complete and total control. All right, now that's my talk. I'm going to edit this very little. I want to just throw it in the way I captured it. And I hope it makes sense to you guys. Thanks for listening and watching. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments below. If you like this type of content, give me a thumbs up. And thank you for listening and watching, and stay tuned. I will try to have more content for you soon. Thank you.